Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the 16th lecture of Guru Manthan. Guru Manthan every week is being organized by the Vivekananda Institute for Leadership Development. With VLead's mission is to develop human and social capital for building a resurgent India. We primarily work with 4 partners or 4 sectors: government, NGOs, corporates, and the community, especially the youth. This particular series of programs, the Guru Manthan, is aimed at being a platform for teachers to share, discuss, debate, and also learn from diverse perspectives and practices which our speakers bring from experience from across the world. It is aimed to be a series of 50 lectures. So over the last 4 months, this is the 4th month, we have had the first lecture starting with Dr. Gurraj Karjigi, then Professor M. K. Sridhar, Mr. Anurag Beher. We did have Dr. Kasturi Rangan address all of us on Teachers' Day. Mr. Anil Swarup, the former MHRD secretary. Then we also had very interesting discussions last month about language by Professor Annamalai, and then a lecture by Dr. R.S. Praveen Kumar. This month, we have had Ms. Suparna Devakar talk about the nurturing communities of learning and practice last week. And this week, we have a very, very special teacher, actually a practitioner with us, who will be talking about children on this special day of Children's Day. Mr. Satheesh retired as a science teacher from the demonstration school, or earlier known as the Demonstration Multipurpose School, run by NCERT, the Regional Institute of Education in Mysore. Like every other week, the session will start with a lecture, about 25 to 30 minutes of lecture by Satheesh sir on the topic. Then we will have a question answer session, which will be moderated by Mr. Ramesh and Mrs. Bhagyalakshmi, a lecturer of Mysore Diet. And then we will have concluding remarks by Mr. Satheesh towards the end of the lecture. And today is a very special day for whom we all commit our lives to. So over to you, sir.
Good evening to everyone. Happy Children's Day. First, I believe that there is a child in every adult and there is an adult in every child. Therefore, all of us can be a part of the celebration of Children's Day. Secondly, it's also the Deepavali, Festival of Lights. Let there be light. I wish you all happy Deepavali. Today I'm going to discuss a poem by Kahlil Gibran. Some people pronounce it as Gibran. Maybe I'm not too sure. I think Gibran is generally the one that was that's being used. First, I'll share this screen first, and then okay. So, is it visible?
Yes,
okay.
sir.
Yes,
okay.
sir.
Today, being Children's Day, we'll be talking about a poem titled On Children by Kahlil Gibran. And Kahlil Gibran was a Lebanese poet, artist, writer. He has written a number of short stories. He was an artist too. He later moved from Lebanon to US, and he breathed his last in USA. In any case, his most famous work is the book titled The Prophet. The Prophet is a very moving book. Actually, it consists of 26 prose poems. His work in this book can be best described as poetic essays. In this book, he writes about a number of issues that haunt us day in, day out. He talks about religion, he talks about work, he talks about teaching, he talks about children, he talks about marriage, he talks about sorrow, he talks about happiness, like that. These are some of the issues that bother us day in, day out, and he writes about these issues. The context, he has a unique context to these lyrical poems. Actually, Al Mustafa is a saint. He is a wanderer. He moves from place to place, stays in some village, in a village for some time, interacts with the people there. He talks to them. He shares his experiences and share their experiences. Also listens to their others' experiences as well, and a bondage develops, and then he moves on to another place. So Al Mustafa, the saint, the moving saint, actually is about to leave a village where he had stayed for a long enough time, and the bondage with the people of that village was so much that everyone has gathered there to say goodbye to him. People are in tears. He had developed that kind of a love, bondage with the people. And everyone want him to stay back. But he is a moving saint. Every place his, no place is his. So therefore he had to move. But the people there start asking him, please do not go. He says, I have to go. I can't stay here. Then they say, please give your last message on this, like that. He goes, people go on asking him questions. Someone will say, please talk to us about home. What constitutes home? A laborer asks, please talk to us about work. What is work? Like that, someone who was about to marry will say, oh saint, please talk to us about marriage. There is a mother who has a child in her bosom. She says, please talk to us about children, how to bring up children. So he writes in this book, The Prophet, on 26 different issues. And each one is moving. When I first read this book, in fact, it touched me so much. It touched me so much. And in fact, it changed me in many ways, especially this poem. This poem is also now included in the English textbook of second year PUC. This particular poem is included. So he writes on children, hardly a few lines, maybe about 14 or 15 lines he has written about children. And the context is the mother who has a child in her bosom asks Al Mustafa, please talk to us about children, how to bring them up. What is our relationship with children? Please talk to us about children. First, we will see the poem. What is that poem? Okay.
Your children are not your children. They're the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, not from you. Though they're with you, they belong to themselves. You may give them your love, but not your thought, for they have thoughts of their own. You may house their bodies, not their souls, for their souls dwell in a house of tomorrow. But you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. For life goes not backward, nor tarry with yesterday. You are the bones from which your children's living arrows are sent forth. The archer sees the mark upon the path of the infinite, and he bends you with his mind, that his arrows may go swift and far.
So that's the poem. Let's now take line by line what it really means. One second. I'm a little bit unfamiliar with this. Okay, share screen. Okay. Is it now visible? Is it visible? No. Okay. Okay. All right. So when somebody asks a saint to talk about children, about their own children, the saint replies, "Your children are not your children." How shocking it could be. In fact, when I read this poem, I had a shock of my life. Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. So, children are the expression of life. In the next line, he clarifies, as to what he means. So he says, your children are not your children. Namma makkala bagge heli andre nimma makkalu nimma makkalalla anta andbitre hegagutte, shock agutte. ತನ್ನಷ್ಟಕ್ಕೆ ತಾನೇ ತುಡಿಯುವ ಈ ಬದುಕಿನ ಸುತೆಯರು ಅವರು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾನೆ. So they are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. It's an expression of life. There is a tendency about continuity in life. As a part of that continuity, children are born. So he says, they come through you, but not from you. Nobody can say that they are my children. It's like a seed that sprouts out of the soil. So it sprouts out of the soil, but soil cannot claim that because of me it has sprouted. So they come through you, but not from you. Though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. We often say that my child, my son, my daughter. So we take pride. We say as though we are the owners of those children. Kahlil Gibran questions that idea of ownership. For that matter, no human being can own another human being, let alone children. So therefore, he says, your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. They may be with you. We live in the same house. We share the same food. We go together. We play together. But still, they do not belong to us, the parents. This is what he's trying to say. They come through you, but not from you. Though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. They belong not to you. So parents do not own their children. No one owns anything, and least of all, a human being in the form of children. Russell M. Nelson says this. He's a surgeon from USA and also a religious leader. No, we don't own our children. Our parental privilege is to love them, to lead them, and to let them go. In fact, we have a tendency, we are so obsessive about our children. We are overprotective. We control. We place restrictions with the best of intentions. And we want to keep them with us. But we cannot keep them because they are not born to be with parents. They are not ours to keep, but to teach how to soar on their own. So children should be taught as to how they can move independently, draw the course of their own lives, choose their own path, pursue their own ambitions, and they are not meant to be with us. In fact, probably this is only in human beings that we are so obsessive about children. If you look at the animal world, in no other species do we see this kind of a longing to keep the young ones with the parents throughout life, till the last breath of the parents. There is no such longing. So the parents play their role and let the young ones to go away from them. So they lead. But only in human beings we have that kind of a longing to keep children with us, and we want them to be like us only. That's because we grow up in a belief system according to which children should always make their parents proud and happy. So we want them to do well in the examinations. We want them to behave well when we visit our friends or relatives. So they should make, we think as though children are meant to make the parents very happy and proud. There is nothing wrong in doing that. There's nothing wrong in doing that. But that is not the purpose for which children are born. So instead of children themselves being very and happy, we think that children are meant, and that is done in good faith. Of course, I'm not questioning that. Fortunately, the belief system in most cultures, and especially in our culture too, that kind of a thing prevails. So therefore, we want to own the children. Own the children. We want them to listen to our advice. We want them to follow our dictates. We want them to study what we want. We want them to pursue a course that we choose for them. And basically, this problem arises because we do not trust the children enough. And we think that they are unable to take decisions on their own. Yes, they may lack in experience, they may lack the information, but finally, they are capable of making decisions, provided they have all the inputs, they have the information with them. So we are conditioned to control children because we do not trust them enough. So he continues, you may house their bodies, but not their souls. For their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow. We, the parents, represent the past. We have a baggage of the past, whereas children do not have that kind of a baggage. Therefore, their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, in the sense that their dreams are different from ours. Their goals are different from what we try to give for them. Their values may be different from ours. There is no guarantee that the values pursued by the parents will be emulated by the children. We have the great example of Mahatma Gandhi, whose son Harilal was quite opposite to what Gandhi stood for. Therefore, there is no guarantee that the values of parents or the persuasions of the parents will fit the youngsters, because they have their own ambitions, their own goals, their own persuasions, and therefore we cannot match them like that. To raise a child who is comfortable enough to leave you means you have done your job. So in these lines, actually, Kahlil Gibran says, parents have a role in bringing up children, but they do not have ownership of children. They do not have any ownership of their ideas. They can't exercise control or force them to do what parents want. Children are not the instruments to fulfill our unfinished agenda. Children are not instruments to fulfill our unmet goals. Many a time, many parents say that I wanted to become a doctor, I couldn't. At least my daughter should become a doctor. Not that there is anything wrong in becoming a doctor, but the daughter may have something else in her mind. Her persuasions may be different. Her dreams may be different. They are not ours to keep, but to teach how to soar on their own. This is what it says. So children make their own paths into the unknown, paths that we would never think of making for them. This is the famous words of John Holt, an American educationist, who has written some wonderful books. One such book is Escape from Childhood. Escape from Childhood, a very moving short book. He also written How Children Learn. I'm also drawing some, because they actually match with what Kahlil Gibran is trying to say. children make their own paths, not the paths given to them by elders. It may be teachers, it may be parents, or whoever it may be. And we will not be able to give because they belong to tomorrow. They belong to tomorrow. They are the people of tomorrow. Whereas we are bogged down or we are governed by our past. So therefore, great parenting happens when we start controlling ourselves and stop controlling our children. Often we want to control them, whereas we have very little control over our own selves. I want to share an anecdote from my own personal experience. Once my son had to participate in a intercollegiate debate on whether democracy is good for India. And he asked me to give some points. Then I gave some points in favor of democracy. And he went and came back and told me that he won a prize and said, I have won a prize, that is okay, but I want to talk to you something else. I said, yes. He said, you are not a democratic person. You speak well about democracy, but you are not democratic. And when he said this, it was so hurtful. In fact, I became speechless. I never expected that from him, but I didn't say anything. I said, maybe. I said, and I ended the conversation, but it was haunting me for days. One fine day, he said, well, my son, on the other day, you said that I'm not a democratic person. What made you to think so? Why do you think that I'm undemocratic? No, he gave a list of anecdotes, a list of my conduct, which were undemocratic. It was unbelievable for me that, so children will be observing. They are very good observers. Then I said, I'll introspect. You have given me so much of inputs, I'll introspect. So a few months passed, and how is my attitude now? I asked one day. I see some signs of democratic attitude in you. He said, so great parenting happens when we start controlling ourselves. Rather than I would have shouted at him for after having helped him to win a prize in a debate, to get a reward that I am in the form of a comment that I am undemocratic can be painful, and it did pain me on that day. I'm confessing before you, but I congratulate myself for not having reacted any aggressively in an aggressive manner on that day. It helped, and after that, actually, we became good friends and we could criticize each other, to correct each other, to guide each other, and that can happen. So all I'm saying can be summed up in 2 words, says John Holt. Trust children. Trust children. Nothing could be more simple or more difficult. Trusting children is not easy. Although it looks very simple, it's not easy. Difficult because to trust children, we must first learn to trust ourselves. And most of us were taught as children that we could not be trusted. That's why this actually a kind of a chain where I had that kind of an experience in childhood. Maybe I think that is the right way, and therefore I try to control my children. So therefore, trusting children is the key. Kahlil Gibran says, you may strive to be like them, like children. Try to become a child, but seek not to make them like you. Most parents want their children to grow up like them. That is limiting the limits of growth. The horizons of their growth, because they have boundless capacity to grow. But we want to restrict them. We tell them to do this, not to do this, go here, don't go here, this is right, this is wrong. Every time we control them, therefore we narrow their choices, and therefore the choice for experimentation, opportunity for failure, or we want to limit that. And therefore, what happens is children learn from all experiences, even from failures they learn. This is not recognized enough by many parents and teachers. So he says, you may try to be like them. In many ways, we must become childlike, if not childish, of course, childlike. For instance, being happy for no reason, only children can be. As we grow up, we are a worried lot. We are bogged down by a number of issues, small, big, and not so. We either live in yesterday or tomorrow, not in the present, whereas therefore they are a happy lot. So Kahlil Gibran says, you may strive not to make them like you, for it goes not backward. Life shouldn't go back at all, nor tories with yesterday. It should not stand still with yesterday's values and practices and belief systems, and life should not go backward. Once we strive or try to make children to be like us, what we are doing is we are trying to push life backwards. They are not meant to go backwards, they are meant to go forward. So life goes not backward nor tarries with yesterday. It won't remain stand still. So being happy for no reason, like a child, if you are happy for a reason, you are in trouble. The trouble with adults is that we are happy for a reason. I bought a new vehicle, I'm very happy. And next day I dash against a stone, and now that's the cause of my worry, because I'm pained that a new car I have dented. So if you are happy for a reason, you are in trouble, because that reason can be taken from you, taken away from you. So therefore, there are many things that we can learn from children. There is joy and wonder everywhere when you see the world through the eyes of a child. So therefore, being childlike is a virtue, and therefore Kahlil Gibran says, if possible, try to be like your children. Don't expect them to grow up like you. That is what he says. Rather than pushing children to think like adults, we might do better to remember that they are great learners and to try harder to be more like them. So they may not like to read what is given in the textbook, but they have unquenching thirst for learning. They want to learn. Give something interesting, they will learn, they will explore, they will experiment, they will mess up things, but they learn a lot of things on their own. The tendency is to learn is very strong in children. For instance, the ability to pick up several languages at the same time is stronger in children than in adults. Therefore, children have enormous capacity to learn, but we want them to learn only what is there in the book. We want them to learn in certain restricted ways. We want them to learn question and answers. We want them to follow what adults say. We don't want them to think on their own, because we don't trust them enough. So Kahlil Gibran in the last few lines, talks about the role of parents. Here, till now, he was talking to us about the nature of children. Now, what is the role of children? You are the bows which your children as living arrows are sent forth. The role of a bow is to send the arrow far and swift, far and swift. So therefore, our role is to promote their growth, development, promote the development of their own value systems, to promote independent thinking, to nurture creativity, so that they become better than us. All parents, I'm sure, whatever may be the wrong practice they may do in bringing up children, definitely in their heart, want their children to become better individuals, better human beings, better achievers. Therefore, there is nothing wrong in intent, but good intent is not good enough unless we know the path to choose to lead them to such goals. So you are the bows. Here you means the parents and teachers are the bows which our children as living arrows are sent forth. Who sends them? Kahlil Gibran says the archer here, archer is the God. So he says, your children are not your children. They are the children of nature, God. The archer see the mark upon the path of the infinite, and he bends you with his might, that his arrows may go swift and far. So therefore, he bends the parents. Bringing up children is not easy. It can be a painful experience. Many parents shed tears when they think of their children, their behavior, conduct. Who says parenting is easy? But to remain stable, remain calm, remain committed to the growth of children is very, very important according to Kahlil Gibran. So the archer here is the creator, the God, see the mark upon the path of the infinite. So he wants the children to go as far as is possible. And he bends you with his might so that he can send his arrows swift and far. He says, yes, you have to bend because the archer is bending you for the growth of the children. And when you bend, it pains. It's so painful. He says, let your bending in the archer's hand be for happiness or gladness. Be happy when you are pained when bringing up children because he says very important concluding lines. So when he says bend means parents will have to compromise. Parents will have to bend down. Parents will have to give up their baggage. Parents and teachers will have to give up their notions about children and their ability and learn to trust them, and that can be a very painful experience. Sometimes it can be so painful, and he says, let that pain be for happiness. Let your bending in the archer's hand be for gladness. The pain is something we must choose to endure in order to become better. Parents become complete human beings when they bring up a child, their own biological child or an adopted child. I don't mean any thing offensive to people who may not have children. So while bringing up a child, we achieve a degree of completeness. We find a new meaning in life. That pain is something we must choose to endure, not to shun away from it, not to say that my life should be painless in bringing up my child. It may not be like that. so that we become better human beings. And therefore, he says, let that pain be for happiness. Why should we be happy when we had to pass through that painful experience of bringing up children? Kahlil Gibran says, for even as he loves the arrows that fly swift and far, he also loves the bow that is stable. That's why he says, let that pain be for happiness. ಮಕ್ಕಳನ್ನು ಬೆಳೆಸುವಲ್ಲಿ ನಿಮಗಾಗುವ ನೋವು ಆನಂದಕ್ಕಾಗಿ ಇರಲಿ. ಏಕೆಂದರೆ ಆ ಬಿಲ್ಲುಗಾರ ದೂರಕ್ಕೆ ವೇಗವಾಗಿ ಸಾಗುವ ಬಾಣಗಳನ್ನು ಪ್ರೀತಿಸುವಷ್ಟೇ ಸ್ಥಿರವಾಗಿ ನಿಂತು ಬಾಗುವ ಬಿಲ್ಲನ್ನು ಕೂಡ ಪ್ರೀತಿಸ್ತಾನೆ. ಅಂದ್ರೆ he loves both the parents and the child. Child, of course, cannot remain with the parent, because they are the arrows meant to move away. For that, parents have a role. There is no formula to bring up children. Sutragalilla, patra ide. Parents have a role to bring up children. And that's the message that Kahlil Gibran tries to give in the short poem on children. So he says, ನಿಮ್ಮ ಮಕ್ಕಳು ನಿಮ್ಮ ಮಕ್ಕಳಲ್ಲ. ಅಂದ್ರೆ don't be obsessive about children. Don't try to overpower them by your age, by your understanding, by your experience, because they have a tendency to have their own experience of life. Allow them to be free, because you can only house their bodies but not their souls. Anyway, it changed my relationship with my child. Thank you so much. Now some questions.
Thank you very much, sir. I think it was a most inspiring 30 minutes. It took me back to my own college days when I first read Gibrans poem. In fact, I started with The Madman before I came to Prophet. That's his first book before I came to that. I was also reminded of what Bhagavan Krishna himself says in the Bhagavad Gita, where he tells Arjuna that you are a nimitta matram, Sabyasachi, where you are an instrument, or at best only an instrumental cause of everything that is happening, and not necessarily. So you needn't take the responsibility for all that is being played out in this place. That is also, but only in the fairness of things, I must also play the role of the devil's advocate here.
Yes.
And also must look and also post you for certain counterpoints that I hope you will we'll be free to we'll take it in this one. So one of the thoughts that comes to mind is that is Gibran's view of children and the need for unfettered freedom a little too idealistic, particularly when the education system as well as the parenting ecosystem that we live in is often a function of competitive one-upmanship. It's a dog-eat-dog world in which so do we run the risk of actually ill-preparing our children for a world that is very far from the utopia that Gibran tends to portray in this poem? So like I said, it's a counter view that I wanted to get your feedback on.
No, I understand that. He never says that you should not guide them. He never says that you shouldn't set goals for them. But you can't decide the goals on behalf of them. Because given the right kind of inputs, children at some point of time are capable of carving out their own path, pursuing their own goals, setting their own targets. And in fact, we get umpteen examples from our own lives when we see around us. I remember one of my son's classmate, she wanted to do something in human behavior. Parents forced her to join engineering. So after 4 semesters, she gave up. And in fact, she had to be hospitalized. I don't want to go into the details of that, but she went into a spell of depression. She didn't want to do that. Later on, she gave up after 5 semesters. After 5 semesters, fourth semester, there was a problem, but still parents persuaded her to continue with fifth semester. Then finally she said, enough is enough. She gave up. And finally, she joined BA. Now she is doing PhD in psychology, doing very well. She got first rank to the University of Mysore in psychology. See, that is the place where she wanted to be. And she is doing very well. But we parents set targets. Oh, my son should be at least an engineer or a doctor or something like that. No, we say our unfulfilled ambitions, children are not the instruments to fulfill our wishes, because they have their own wish. That's what he is trying to say. It is not that parents have no role to say. It is not a laissez-faire policy where children have absolute freedom and they simply roam around and do nothing. It's not that. I said parents do have a role. True, the arrows cannot go on their own in a given direction. There must be a guide. There must be a bow that bends. So he is very clear, I think, in his thoughts that it is not giving absolute freedom and leaving children to flourish themselves. And in fact, there are examples, even when children are given that choice, some children have really attained greatness in their life. There are, but we cannot, probably I find a point in what you're trying to say, that children cannot be left like that. So parents cannot be irresponsible, indifferent to the needs of the children. We have a role to play. You can give them your love. When he says you can give your love, but not your thoughts. That's what he's trying to say. Giving love means taking care of them. Giving love is unconditional acceptance of their success and failures. Now, in fact, many of those sentences are heavily loaded. Just to take that line that you can give them your love, but not your thoughts. That itself is a very loaded thing. So when you love them, you cannot be indifferent to their growth and development. So love has no conditions. Many a time, parents actually become selfish in setting goals and in expecting them to remain with them and to take care of them. After all, children have already given all the pleasure to the parents when they were so young. So, in fact, already we have got the benefit of bringing up a child. So that act itself is such a pleasureful thing that children have paid back. In fact, in many families, often there is argument between parents and children. When children say, I did this for you, I did that for you, I am your parent, for 9 months I cared for keeping you in my womb. And when they say, did I ask you to do that? There's no answer for that question. That's why Kahlil Gibran says that they have come through you, yet they do not belong to you. They do not belong to you. It never gives freedom to the parents from their responsibility. In fact, parents have a greater responsibility in Kahlil Gibran's paradigm. Many a time he appears very paradoxical. He said it appears as though he's talking about the opposites. But in reality, when I went through that poem, I felt that it has deeper meaning. Probably it requires a longish and a deeper discourse.
Thank you, sir. I think the next question is from Ms. Bhagilakshmi. She's asking.
Sir, namaste, sir. After listening so many science topics from you today on this Children's Day, it is very amazing and amazing to listen topic on children, especially from Kahlil Gibran, and things from you, sir. The way you narrated it was simply superb. And here is a question. Children want to go in their own way in spite of guidance available to them, and later on they repent and complain that it was their parents' mistake or some peer influence, it was something like that. So, what is the message for such children, sir?
No, you have said that children will come back to the right so-called the right path. You said that's good. Actually, you have allowed them to make a mistake, and they have learned from their mistake, and they have come back. And life gives that opportunity to correct themselves. After all, we parents sometimes speak as though that we never committed any mistake at all. Can any parent say with any degree of confidence or authenticity that I have never made a mistake? No, we have made mistakes. We have corrected ourselves. Sometimes we have not corrected ourselves. That's also a fact. So therefore, if children make a small mistake, it's okay. It's okay, because we learn a lot of things from our failures and mistakes rather than. So success doesn't mean, everyone will not get success in the first go. And in fact, very little is learned when success comes easily. When things are hard, when we tread on a rough road, a lot of things are learned. Better driving, the skill of driving is tested on a rough road rather than on a smoother road. So therefore, what Kahlil Gibran says is that allow them that space. Space is very important for him. He talks about space in something else, about marriage. He talks about marriage, and there he talks about space. So allowing that space for children to make experiments. When we experiment, yes, some experiments succeed, some experiments do not. Even in a scientist's lives, not all that is tried will give the desired result. So therefore, success is not the only criteria to assess a person's progress in life. What is the learning that comes out of that experience, experimentation, is the critical thing. So therefore, roads are built not to reach a destination. It is made for a journey. In that journey, there are some uphills and there are some problems, and only when there are problems we will learn to handle them. And when there are no problems, probably we'll be missing a very good part of life's experience that will make us little impoverished.
Thank you, sir. One other thing I think is one of the things that's always intrigued me about Gibran and generally all of his writing is the fact that he wrote about so much of life without having experienced much of any of this. For example, he himself never had children, and for all practical purposes, he wasn't married himself. So in that sense, it's quite it's intriguing that he was able to manage all of this, and perhaps it had to do with the kind of childhood that he himself went through, a difficult childhood where he had to fend for himself and all of that. Do you think? Where do we? Is there something practical that we can do? Because we are looking at 3 or 4 ecosystems in which we have to do. There is the family that obviously has to change. There is the schooling system that also needs to change the education. So there are several filters through which a child goes through. And what are there a few steps that you can actually think of that we can do to start ensuring that we become less possessive about our own children?
It's a loaded question. But still there are a lot of smaller things that can be done. For example, even when child tries to walk, we want to hold them. Okay, let the child try to walk. Even when it falls, you can be there by the side to hold him or her, so that he or she doesn't get injured so much. There's nothing wrong in that. But not to allow a child to walk, I think, is a sin that parents commit. When I say not to allow the child to walk, when I'm using that, I'm using it in a different sense, not literally walking. So even that So when a child learns to walk, several times the child will fall. So there will be small injuries, but that's a part of growing up. That's a part of growing up. And therefore, that space should be given. And even when going to the shop, no, you don't know how to count. I will go to the shop and bring this coriander leaves. No, it's okay. After all, coriander, bringing coriander leaves, heavens will not come down even if a mistake is committed. That experience should be given to the children. So therefore, that's why I said, no, we don't trust the children enough, because we are conditioned to think that children should not be trusted. That is the problem with us. And therefore, like this, for example, child is reading. Yes, while reading, child makes mistakes. And when the child is learning to read, a few mistakes are fine. But we as adults get upset. Maybe I'm a teacher, I get upset when a child mispronounces a word, or when the child writes things wrongly. Yes, that space should be accepted. There are 10 things the child has done correctly, 2 things have gone wrong, accept the child. And while we have a role to guide the child where how those mistakes are actually coming in the way of her communication or her understanding or her ability to read, but at the same time, we'll not be too much judgmental about children and say that, so you have come to 7th standard, you don't know how to read this? That kind of, taking away the confidence, self-confidence of the child. After all, we say the children needs that confidence. After all, don't we need that confidence? That's why when I started this session, I said there is a child in every adult and there is an adult in every child. So therefore, actually, we are also like children. We also commit the same kind of mistakes which children do commit. But we simply ignore it as though we have a right to commit mistakes and children do not have a right to commit mistakes. That is not it. It must be other way around, because children are learners, and making mistakes is a part of learning, and therefore that should be accepted. Accept the children, guide them, discuss with them. They will see the perspective, the adult's perspective, why the person is telling. But the problem comes when we become too much judgmental about them and say that my son will never write a sentence correctly. At least there will be one spelling mistake. Now, if I say this to a 3rd standard child or a 2nd standard child, what is the level? What is the message that we are conveying? Conveying as though that we never commit a mistake while writing. Try and write a paragraph and read it again. Then you will know that there will be mistakes. There will be mistakes, sometimes knowingly, sometimes unknowingly. So that is a part. So why didn't you get 100%? 99? 99 is not good enough. You should not have lost that 1 mark. As though they are not machines. They are not machines. And what is the difference after all in the intellectual ability of a child who scores 99 and 100? Not that parents do not understand this, but still they are conditioned to think in this way. And that is not actually helping children. That's what I think is the message of this poem. So what coming back to the question, that what few things that can be done to promote that is, one is to trust children, giving space for them to experiment and to go wrong sometimes. Yes, that freedom to commit mistakes should be there. Not that they continue to commit the same mistake again and again and again and again. Not that. But mistakes do happen in life. Or we try a number of things. Have we succeeded in all our endeavors? Not really. Not really. Something we might not have taken into account while planning. Things can go wrong. And that trust, I made that mistake. So we analyze, we introspect, we analyze, and correct ourselves and move on. And that space should be available to children as well. That's what the point of this poem is.
Thank you, sir. One last question from Bhagilakshmi, then we'll go to Kaur.
Yes.
Sir, how do you see Indian family system and its values against the Western world when it comes to its impact on the upbringing of children, sir?
I don't know enough about the Western world, madam. So therefore, I hesitate to comment on that. But certainly in Indian system, not that all our values are wrong or all our values are right. We have, you see, always there is a cultural transmission of values will have its good points and will have its limitations. And through education, actually, children should be empowered. There are three functions of education. One is cultural transmission. What is good will have to be handed over to the next generation so that they will also continue with those values. Second one is cultural conservation. We have to preserve and transmit. Second is transmission. Conservation, transmission, and transformation. Unfortunately, in all cultures, not all that we inherit culturally are only good things. Yes, at some point of time, somebody believed in a value system which may not be in tune with the modern times. For example, we cannot accept in the today's world the practice of untouchability. Just because by birth somebody becomes superior will have to be questioned. And therefore, you know, the role of education becomes very important. When I say education, not necessarily what is taught in the schools, not just what is taught in the schools. In fact, good amount of learning happens outside the four walls of the classroom or outside the school itself. Children should learn to question the powers that be, the values that are dehumanizing, the values that are not in tune with the modern understanding of human relationships. At the same time, there are many good things. For example, our music, our dance forms, they are to be preserved, cherished, and they must be transmitted to the next generation. The many of our value systems are eternal, and therefore those values will have to be strengthened through dialogue, through examples. So children observe and learn more rather than from the question and answers that we teach them to mug up in the classrooms and reproduce them in the examination. So therefore, what examples do they see with their parents, with the neighbors, in the society? So that itself will give a very strong message about cultural conservation and cultural transmission. Transmission requires more organized effort to transmit them to the next generation. And most importantly, and I think this is one area we are not succeeding as much as we should have been, is in the process of cultural transformation. There are many things. For example, gender inequality. It's a cultural inheritance that we have. So that is not acceptable. That we know today that is not to be accepted. That has to be questioned. And if children are brought in a very secured, very protected, and in a conditioned environment, children fail to think differently, and therefore they become better fits into the existing order. And that is an impediment, or it impedes social transformation, and it slows down. Therefore, what is important is that space I was talking about is very important even in thinking, even thinking. When children learns to question the existing value systems, and our certain aspects of our culture, society will evolve into a better society. Human beings get better evolved. All of us need that kind of an evolution. And that is possible only when we trust children and give them the space for them to experiment, fail, succeed, progress, and this is a part of the growing up, part of their growing up.
Thank you very much, sir. I think you could go to your closing remarks for 2 minutes. That will be followed by the vote of thanks and then the closing. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. And once again, I wish you on the occasion of Festival of Lights and also greetings on the occasion of Children's Day. And yes, children, actually, there is a saying, old saying, that child is the father of the man. Child is the father of the man. So what it means that we can learn many things from children. The idea that adults know everything and children do not know anything is a mistaken notion that we must all give up. Children are capable of thinking, they are capable of making decisions, they are capable of observation, they are capable of integrating new ideas and values into their own personality. Therefore, what really is to give them that freedom to experiment and explore. Unfortunately, in most families and in schools, that is becoming too small a place, very restricted, confined environment where they are jailed. And that's why John Holt actually calls it escape from childhood. I hope I'm holding it properly.
Yes, sir, we can see it.
This is escape from childhood. Not that everything that is written in this book is applicable to our culture. There are some cultural variations. It is written keeping in context the American culture, not that it will best fit to our conditions, but still it's a very good. And also another book by him, How Children Learn. He worked with children for a fair number of years, very long years of spent with children. And based on his experience, he writes in consonance with what Kahlil Gibran is trying to say. So finally, what it means, children belong to tomorrow. And tomorrow's world we do not know. Therefore, we cannot prepare children for tomorrow by keeping in view our experiences of yesterday. That's not good enough. That's not good enough. I'm not saying that it is bad. I'm not saying it is bad, but it is not good enough to prepare them for tomorrow, because tomorrow requires ability to handle challenges, ability to think creatively, ability to experiment, ability to learn from failures. And the only way to prepare the younger generation world is to give up our obsession with them, and remembering that our children are not our children. They are the sons and daughters of life, longing for itself. They might have come through us and not from us. And we have a role in their bringing up, and that cannot be underestimated. That cannot be neglected. And once we play our role, finally, it is their life. It is their life. They may not come up the way we want, but as long as they come up in life and be happy in life, I don't know happiness, how it's defined, that itself becomes a different discourse. So preparing children for being happy in the tomorrow's world is the task of the teacher as well as of the parents. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. To formally render the vote of thanks, we have one of your students, Kalyani, who's here. Over to you, Kalyani.
Thank you, Praveen. Thanks a lot. Hello, sir. I don't think you were expecting this, but yes, hi. I don't know what to speak about what you said, because they're all very well put, but I just have one quote that I would like to say. Sometimes the best way to solve your own problems is to help someone else. Uh, so yeah, if I don't see I don't want to comment on the parent part of this, but like I would like to comment on what you did as a teacher. Basically, most people don't know, like after this, how you've been as a teacher. So I'd like to say about it. We just didn't learn science in his classes. We learned a lot of politics, a lot of English actually. We had to bring our dictionaries every day. Otherwise, we'd be graded negative. Yes.
It's not a compliment at all. It's not a compliment at all. You have to bring dictionary every time. And, okay.
Well,
No,
sir,
no,
well, sir, you have to
I get
refer
your
to
point.
something
I was only.
to gain knowledge. So, yeah. Okay. We also learned a lot of maths through games. Okay, that's just comes with science. And we also learned a lot of English, Kannada as well. Yeah, you kept elocution competitions, and I failed miserably in that. So yes, we learned a lot of art as well, communicating science through art, and more basically, we learned self-care and self-hygiene. Maybe you're the first teacher to speak to us about self-hygiene in a very open way. Um, and it was a lot of fun actually. Mostly the games we played, treasure hunt or the attention games. I don't know what to call it actually. But all of it was so much fun. Like having you as a teacher was an all-round development. And especially when you used to say that it's so great that if I become a teacher, I teach well. I still remember that. And you made me teach topics in classes that actually made me overcome a lot of stage fear and stuff. So it's like a lot of them have helped me a lot. Especially, yes, you asked us to maintain the scientific dogma that we inculcate in scientific thinking. And yes, that does help us a lot in not being in a particular bias. Not to blame on people of the older generation, but at least it's on us that we don't uh, be in their position again after learning a lot and having a great teacher who actually taught us how to learn it. Yes, I only have compliments for now, nothing else. I think I'm done.
Thank
And
you.
I'm
No,
very glad to have
I must compliment
been
you.
speaking.
I said many things is no greatness, but you remember all of them and you're quoting as though it happened just the other day. That
Yeah,
itself speaks
actually it happened like 6 years ago, but yes,
that goes well with what Kahlil Gibran says.
yes. But I'm so glad to be talking to you again after a very long time, actually.
Thank you, Kalyani, and thank you, sir, for the wonderful session. Next week, do join us. We have Professor T.V. Kattimani address all of us. He'll be talking about education of the underprivileged communities. And as you
Sure.
might be aware,
Sure.
he is the present Vice Chancellor of the Central Tribal University of Andhra Pradesh, and he was also a member of the Drafting Committee of the NEP 2020. And do share your feedback and your inputs to help us continue this series. Wish you all a very happy and safe Diwali as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I would like to place on record my sincere thanks to SVYM for giving this opportunity to be on line for this session. Thank you so much. And I don't want to miss other discussion sessions on education, and I would like to be a part of it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. It's always a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.